Okay, so lecture 22. So we're going to ask you to do some thinking today in lab. We're going to talk about the scientific method and how we might use that on a farm. I've got an interesting exercise, at least I think it is. And we're going to talk about, okay, we're going out on a farm, what measurements do we want? Given our categories, what are we looking for? What are we going to use to judge whether or not things are good or bad? Inventory assignment. So how are we coming with your group?
We're still trying to figure out the fifth one.
Okay.
Because we don't really know how to break that down.
I don't know what the numbers, what shape. Like, you have a
Especially
bunch of
'cause it's like-
shapes, and then I'm like, I don't know.
Because it's like really mounded, it's not like,
Uh-huh.
He's like, yeah, that's the point.
I know, but like.
It's a challenge.
How to deal with that because of how high up the mound is, like how tall over 14 feet does it go up?
So you need to kind of
Measure it.
guess at what that is. If you want, at the end of lab, we can go out and take a look and help you work through that.
Sure.
And your guys are looking at Wednesday, right? Or next week?
Yeah, I think it was next. We should have
Okay.
had the day, I think.
Okay, so at least everybody's still working on it. Test on Wednesday.
Oh, sorry, I have a question about the inventory. Are we handing it in as all like?
You can
three of
hand it in
us?
as a
One
group.
for three of us? Okay.
Yeah. If you wish, if you want to do it all individually, that's fine as well.
Probably easier.
I sent you what I thought they were.
Yeah,
Okay,
I still gotta compare them to what I did.
okay, questions?
Are we going off this packet you gave us last time?
We're gonna hopefully get into that a little
I don't
deeper
remember
today,
where we
so
got to.
I would stick with the front pages. I think we only really covered the front side there. So I don't have a copy there, but we have an article in there. Or possibly, I don't know, is this in there or not? This is from the ZinPro lane locomotion calculator. I mean, this is in your, it might be all the way in the back. So the ZinPro locomotion is, as you get toward the back,
No, it's
on the
not.
back side of that, nope, okay, so this, if you go into your dairy reference folder and pull out the lameness locomotion score calculator, one of the things on that is gonna be how much does lameness cost you? So with this, we're talking about a reduction in milk yield. So lame cows produce less milk, that's probably not a surprise to anybody. We're also gonna have reduced fertility, anything 3, 4, and 5. We're gonna start to get measurable declines in those animals' performance. Replacement costs. We've got these lame animals are more likely to be culled. So we're not getting the full potential out of that animal. And we've got an animal coming in that we've invested money that's going to have a certain cost associated with it. Also, treating our animals has a cost to it as well. So certainly ZinPro is trying to sell you something, but this is probably the most costly of all our maladies dealing with our animals. So certainly more costly on average than our metabolic issues. So we need to find a way to get through, to sort through and avoid these if we can. There are spreadsheets in that dairy evaluation folder that if you go through and take your herd and say how many are 1s, how many are 2s, how many are 3s, 4s, and 5s, it will calculate all this information and give you a dollar figure on how much things cost, or how much lameness is costing you. So going back toward the front, we should have a Get Lame, Stay Lame article in that packet.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna take some stuff out of that and we'll talk about that. So the problem with our lame cows in our current system is, do they have an opportunity to rest, to heal in our systems? If we've got a situation where they're always on cement, they're having to stand, we're overstocked, it's going to be very hard for that animal to recover, to become healthy again, to get out of that 4 and 5 range. So one of the things in that article is 10 ways to reduce the animals ever getting lame in the first place. That's what we want to try to avoid, making sure that those animals don't become lame. So maybe getting our heifers exposed to concrete. This is bigger out in the western part of the world where those animals are on dry lots. Basically through their entire heifer career. We need to get them on concrete to get their feet toughened up for what it's like on that cement. So giving them an exposure, so moving those animals in, getting them used to being in a group, having to deal with animals that are bigger than them. If we do that on the first day like we did up at Minor, there's a huge stress associated with that. So bringing those animals in early, making sure we've got enough bunk space for our transition animals. So it says at least 30 or no less than 30. So how much more is that compared to our lactating cow recommendation? What is our lactating cow recommendation? Anybody remember how much bunk space a lactating cow needs? Stocking density. Or how big is a headlock? They're about 24 usually.
Yes.
They might be more than that. So we're looking at 25% more bunk space for our transition animals. So that's going to cost something, but we should have less problems if we're in that range. So improving the stall design, making sure the animals get their resting time, get them off their feet, we'll have less mechanical problems of those hooves breaking down. Less time in the lockups, especially around calving. We have that hormone relaxin that's going to loosen up the hooves. The longer they stand, the more likely that white line is to separate. Minimize your moves as you move through from a dry cow back to a lactating cow. Cool our cows if we can. What do we know about hot cows? They stand up, and if they stand more, they're going to put more pressure on the feet. That's going to cause problems. So use fans over stall areas to improve stall use. If the cows are hot, they're going to gravitate toward the stalls. Putting them over the stalls is certainly helpful. What's the downside of doing that?
Downside of what, I'm sorry?
Putting the fans over the stalls.
Fall.
What?
If they
If they
fall.
fall, that could certainly be a problem. Or they flip apart. There was a bunch of fans that everybody was getting fairly cheap a while ago, and all the blades started flying off.
That's safe.
That's not where you want to be. The challenge with this, if it's over the stalls, it tends to blow the bedding away, especially if it's sawdust. So mattresses are probably preferred, or sand bedding in some way. Minimize the time they spend out of their pens milking, so making sure your system is lined up. Get them in and out. Put down rubber floors, soft cushioning wherever we can to help those animals less on their feet. So more standing time. When do we really need to think about that, or why does it occur? It may happen during the transition period. Those animals are uncomfortable. Maybe they're overheated because they're not getting ventilated properly. There's the contractions of pregnancy. It's going to make those animals stand up. We want less stall. When they're in the stall, we want them laying down. If they're standing up in the stalls because they don't fit right, because they're too hot. Anything that's going to promote standing time. We've got during milking, we sort of have to have them standing, at least in the way we milk now. Heat stress is going to promote more standing, and then any abnormal events or things that we need to have them standing longer. We need to think about where that animal is spending, and is she getting, in our system, her 12 hours to lay down and take care of herself. And we'd like, even in some cases, our heavier producers, 14 hours. So what might trigger lameness? We might have changes at calving, the being uncomfortable, the pen changes, the bodily changes that might occur that may predispose that animal to lameness. We've got the nutritional changes. If we're going from a dry cow ration to a lactating cow ration, what usually happens? Higher energy density, higher nutrient density, the increased chance of acidosis with that new diet, especially if we're coming off several days of not eating around calving. And when she does eat, there may be some new problems. There may be trauma if an animal has problems with her feet, slips and falls, steps on ridges or rocks or something that's going to damage that hoof, damage that leg, is going to trigger that lameness. We've got infectious disease agents. If they are going to throw off her gait, you're going to put more stress on other legs, and there'll be problems as we move through there. So, cow comfort, what can we do during these times here? Trying to get the animal compensating. We've got increased standing times. If she's lame, when we're bringing her up to milk, where is she going to be? She's going to be the back. She's going to be the last one through. That means milking is going to be longer for her. She's going to be on her feet more. We may have some issues with the walking surface or the surface hygiene, especially related to the infectious agents. All these things working together may produce something that she is clinically lame. We have something wrong with the hoof. We may have an infection, hairy heel warts, foot rot, that causes problems. We can try to get out of that cycle by identifying and treating those animals, getting a foot bath program in, routine trimming, trying to give them an opportunity to fix themselves, to rest. If we don't get these things fixed, you tend to go to a downward spiral of long-term consequences, the reduced milk yield, poor reproductive performance, those animals are not getting bred, the increased risk of early culling. She's not producing milk, she's not bred. I need production out of that stall, I need production out of that feed spot. She's not walking right, we'll get rid of her. So as we mentioned before, Dr. Jan Shear has done a lot of discussions, a lot of thinking about this. He also trims hooves, so he's right down there in the muck and the mire, seeing how all of it happens. The challenge with lameness is how prevalent it is, especially in the Northeast. We have the highest rates of lameness in the country. So, and the thing is, most people can see that. Most people can spot that, so it becomes a public perception problem. So topical therapy. Has anybody done topical therapy on some sort of hoof problem? An ulcer, a hairy heel wart, or something that's just been cut off?
Would you kind of block as a topical therapy?
Not specifically,
Like an
no.
ointment, but
No, so topical therapy, often dairy producers assume some topical treatment and a Band-Aid must be therapy for claw lesions. So we've got some sort of openness on that. So how does it feel when we take like betadine or Bactine or alcohol and we put it on an exposed wound?
Doesn't feel good.
It burns like hell, right? It does the same for the cow. It may actually damage tissue that we're trying to repair. So actually, treatment beyond corrective trimming and a foot block are generally counterproductive. If you're going to stick and hold an antibiotic like tetracycline on there, you're going to damage that tissue. We need that tissue to heal, to recover, and start producing hoof again. If you cauterize and burn it off because it's not pH balanced, you're actually doing more damage than what's helped. So when something is necessary, we need to make sure that that wrap gets off. So best rule of thumb is don't do anything to your cow's foot that you wouldn't do to yours if you were in the same situation. So ulcers on the bottom of the feet are often not caused by a bacterial problem. So in that, putting any sort of topical antibiotic on it is not really fixing the problem or addressing the issue. So when we have a separation on the white line, people assume that antibiotics are necessary. All we really need to do is open it up and let it drain. If we get oxygen in there, that's usually all we need to do. So that micro environment, if we can get it open, get it draining, that usually does more than anything we can attach or hold on to that hoof. So foot blocks, if we can get them on there, that's probably what we need to focus on. So we're shifting the weight from one side to the other, giving that thorium, giving that other damage spot an opportunity to heal without weight on it, an opportunity to rest and grow back. So we've got 30 days. How much growth should we get on a sole ulcer? Quarter inch. So we may be able to close up that hole if we can give it a break. Make sure that the bones are not pushing down anymore. But in order to get a good seal on that sole, maybe we need 2 months or a ½ inch of growth that's going to bring that hole back and get us that ½ inch of tissue on the bottom, ½ inch of hoof on the bottom that helps us out. So close things up. So there have been research studies that show there's no real advantage to putting a bandage on there, especially if we leave it on. We need to make sure that we take it off in a few days. Beyond that time, we may actually be doing more damage. We're holding stuff up there that doesn't need to be held up there. We're not letting oxygen through. The challenge becomes, how do we get those off without running them back in a chute? And that's not always easy. So it doesn't always get done. We hope it just falls off, but it may be on there for weeks.
I saw Brad take it off during milking.
If you've got quick feet or quick hands, you might.
Have the blade on the stick.
Okay, so having a system in place is helpful. So something you can hook and take that stuff off without getting kicked or stepped on is good. So the sooner we can get things fixed, better the animal has an opportunity, and we need to think about where the problem is. Is it nutritional? Is it mechanical? Is it infectious? So the longer we let things go on lameness for an individual animal, the less likely she is to be fixed. So when we're thinking about facilities, we need to kind of account for lying time. Are they getting the lying time that they need? Are they getting that 12 to 14 hours? If they're standing up too much, they're going to put the mechanics, the weight on that hoof, and you're going to predispose that to problems. Flooring, we need to check that, making sure that we don't have a lot of standing manure for long periods of time, so you're trying to keep the hooves dry and clean. They're not walking through soup, manure soup. You want to make sure that there's nothing on the floor or part of the floor that will damage the feet. There's no cracks, there's no sharp points, there's nothing sticking up that's going to go up through or separate, go up through the hoof or separate the white line. Our bedding, making sure that we're not introducing something onto the floor that's going to put a pressure point on the bottom of that hoof. So a rock, they step on that rock, especially if it's right on the white line, you're going to have all that weight of the cow in one very small area. You increase the chance of mechanical failure. So trying to keep the floor soft, trying to keep the floor have traction, trying to make sure that all hazards are removed. So some of the things from Jan Shear, any questions on that? So we'll get to a point here where we talk about trimming hooves. I'll introduce it to you now so we can get to the actual practice there. So how do we trim hooves? How do we trim the feet, the claws on these animals? So we'll have a video we'll go through. But basically, we're trying to correct the overgrowth. This is the way up top here that the hoof is supposed to look. The two claws are supposed to look. As we go along, especially in our modern housing systems, we tend to wear the heel off, but not the toe. So since they grow at the same rate, you're going to have an accumulation at the toe of hoof, and you're going to lose, or you're not going to gain anything at the heel. So in order for the animal to compensate, she's going to tilt back, and she's going to spread her toes out as those toes throw things up. So you're going to throw off an imbalance. So what we're trying to do with functional claw trimming is to bring things back in balance. So restore that balance between the toe and heel, make sure that our toe bone is parallel to the floor. So that's the first thing we do, and then while we're there, we check for defects, we fix problems, hopefully doing it early so the animal is not lame as long and we can recover faster. So there's 6 steps that we're working through. Step 1 is we decide how much of the toe has to come off. So if we've worn off the heel at the appropriate rate, but our toe is overgrown, we're going to take a measurement from the hairline down to our sole. Usually we say on a mature Holstein that's about 3 inches. We have different gauges that we have for measuring that 3 inches. We can also do that very easily with a file card, a 3x5 file card. I need it to be that long. Or a Post-it or anything like that. There are lots of ways to measure off. So the first cut is there. That's where we need to come down and reestablish our flat sole underneath our claw. Second step is this line here. We're removing all that extra material there to bring that hoof, that claw back into levelness and spread out our center of gravity over a bigger area on that flat bone. Also trying to balance side to side, not only front to back, but side to side, making sure our toe bone, we're using the entire surface to support that animal, not just a side or a corner. So as part of step 2, we're taking off the outside, trying to save as much of the heel. Hopefully after steps that we're doing here to trim, we have everything lined up and leveled out. Step 3, we're going to go through and look at the sole, clean that up, level that out. We're trying to get as much as we can for the animal to walk on. So when we're looking at our something like that, we want to create a surface for the animal to walk on. So the outer edge, we're trying to get 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch. That's going to be weight bearing. We don't want it to be pointed or all the weight on that very outside of the wall. So both of our hooves, we try to create a circle that the animal walks on. And we're trying to make sure that underneath, we're going to slope the sole, but we're going to keep that outside edge flat. Especially if our white line is here, you want it the same flat. You want weight-bearing possibilities on either side of that. So you're working your way around each of the toes, the claws, and you're trying to balance things out, trying to establish that circle in some way, shape, or form. Steps 5 and 6, we will add some therapeutic or curative trimming procedures if there's a problem. So removing the rotted or loose hoof that we will find in that. Getting all that loose material off allows the hoof to not collect manure, to stay drier. So if it's all kind of scaly and broken up, it's really not doing the cow any good from a standing up perspective. If you've got a sole ulcer, or you've got a part of the white line that's not as healthy as it might be, one of the things we'll do with the hoof, if we don't need a block, it's not as severe, is we'll take out a section of the hoof to take the weight off that particular area. So like trimming up a 1/4 inch on a specific area, whether that be the toe or the outside edge or the heel, you're trying to eliminate certain spots that are weight bearing. So if I take this area out of here and make it not weight bearing for a month, cutting that a little bit higher and deeper, another 1/4 inch, that white line will have a month where nothing is really pushing on it until everything gets caught up the next time we bring her in for trimming. So giving that area a break, cutting up to 1/4 inch, gives her an opportunity to heal. Now, if we put a block on one side, that's going to lift everything up and putting all the weight on one side. Hopefully, we've got enough strength in those blocks that it's not going to mechanically damage the good toe. So our steps, we want to strain the animal, clean the hoof, so we'll get an opportunity to do that. We got to figure out where we are, front, back foot. We're going to trim the front to 3 inches. So that's step 1. You want to balance that 1 foot and put everything where it's supposed to be, and then we go to the other claw and make sure it matches. So we're trying to create this circle of support around that animal. So she's stepping on that foot as much as she can. That inside space, we'll shape it, we'll clean it, slope it a little bit toward the inner. We're trying to open all this area up in the center. Make sure the heels are balanced, that you've got equal weight, they're equal height. So you're going around that circle, leveling things out. So the 5 and 6, the therapeutic or curative procedures, we want to remove all the loose hoof. So any material that's gone chalky, it's loose, it's flaky, it's just going to collect moisture, collect manure. So if we get rid of it, the hoof should stay drier and hopefully grow in better and stronger for the future. If we've got any issues, we're going to cut back or trim a little bit extra to relieve that animal, take the weight bearing off an area that might cause her pain and cause her to move the wrong way. So we're going to do that. I'm not sure if it's next week or the week after. We're going to take some cadaver feet and give you an opportunity to work on them and see what it's like to do this job of hoof trimming and what issues we might want to run into, or we might run into moving forward. So, any questions on feet? The importance thereof. So I appear to have run out of lecture today. So I guess I'm going to let you go early.
When does our test go till in the notes?
I don't remember. Lecture. Probably 19, but I'll get that posted for you, or I'll get it figured out before lab today.
So we're just gonna be in the classroom for lab?
Yeah, we've got to do some scientific method stuff. So, apologize for coming up short. I thought I had more.
You're
Way more
fine.
time. You're not getting your money's worth, so.
Gosh darn it, Looney.
I know, sorry. Doesn't happen very often. But we're also missing a bunch of people, so that'll make a difference as well. Okay, so what am I doing here? I'm stopping the recording.